In the heart of a bustling city where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and neon lights painted the streets at night, there was a darker side that most people never saw. Beneath the surface of this vibrant metropolis lay secrets. Secrets hidden in plain sight, buried under layers of corruption and greed. It wasn't just criminals who thrived in this underworld. Sometimes those sworn to protect the innocent played their own dangerous games. Detective Marcus Hale was one such figure. Once celebrated as a rising star in the police department, Marcus had earned accolades for his quick thinking and fearless attitude. But over time, something changed. The pressures of the job, the long hours spent chasing bad guys, and the constant exposure to crime began to wear him down. What started as small compromises, a little extra cash here turning a blind eye there, slowly spiraled out of control. Before he knew it, Marcus found himself knee-deep in a life he couldn't escape from. Marcus's newest scheme involved extorting money from local businesses. He called it protection money, though it was anything but protective. Business owners paid him off to avoid trouble, maybe a surprise inspection, or worse, fabricated charges that could shut them down permanently. To Marcus, it seemed like an easy way to make ends meet. After all, everyone else in his circle did the same thing. Why shouldn't he? One evening, Marcus decided to visit a quaint little cafe tucked away on a quiet street downtown. The cafe, named Carter's Corner, was owned by a young woman named Evelyn Carter. From the outside, it looked harmless enough, a cozy spot with warm lighting and the smell of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air. Customers loved it, and business appeared to be thriving. To Marcus, this meant only one thing: opportunity. What Marcus didn't know, and what would soon change everything, was that Evelyn Carter wasn't your average cafe owner. In reality, she was Special Agent Evelyn Carter, a highly skilled operative working undercover for the Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI. For months, Evelyn had been embedded in the community, gathering evidence of widespread corruption within the police department. Her mission was clear: expose the rot from within and bring justice to those abusing their power. She had already uncovered some disturbing truths, but nothing prepared her for what happened next. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city, Evelyn locked up the cafe after another busy day. She wiped down tables, stacked chairs, and turned off the lights, preparing to head home. Just as she reached for her coat, the door swung open violently, startling her. Standing in the doorway was Detective Marcus Hale, his face grim and his eyes cold. He stepped inside without invitation, letting the door slam shut behind him. "Evening," Marcus said gruffly, his voice dripping with authority. He glanced around the empty cafe, taking in the neatly arranged furniture and the faint aroma of espresso lingering in the air. Then his gaze settled on Evelyn, who stood frozen behind the counter. "You're Evelyn, right?" he asked, though it wasn't really a question. His tone left no room for argument. Evelyn nodded slowly, forcing herself to remain calm despite the knot forming in her stomach. Something about this man set off alarm bells in her mind, but she couldn't afford to let her guard down. Not yet. Marcus moved closer, his boots clicking against the tiled floor. He stopped just a few feet away from Evelyn, close enough for her to see the glint of determination in his eyes. Without warning, he pulled out his service weapon and pointed it directly at her. Evelyn's breath hitched, but she forced herself not to react. This wasn't the first time someone had threatened her during her career, and it certainly wouldn't be the last. "I'm going to make this simple," Marcus said, his voice low and menacing. "You've got two choices. Either you pay me $5,000 in cash by tomorrow morning, or I shut this place down. Permanently." Evelyn blinked, pretending to be shocked and afraid. Inside, however, her mind was racing. She recognized the situation for what it was: an extortion attempt. But unlike other victims, Evelyn had resources at her disposal. Hidden beneath her scarf was a tiny microphone recording every word Marcus said. Every threat, every demand, it was all being captured for evidence. Despite her training, Evelyn felt a flicker of genuine fear. Marcus was unpredictable, and having a gun pointed at her made the stakes painfully real. Still, she knew better than to show weakness. Instead, She adopted the persona of a scared cafe owner, stammering as she replied, I don't have that kind of money. Please, I work hard for this place. Can't we talk about this? Marcus sneered, clearly enjoying the power he held over her. Talk? Sure, we can talk. But the price stays the same. You pay up or you lose everything. Your choice. For a moment, the two of them stood there in tense silence. The weight of the situation pressed down on Evelyn, but she refused to crack. Slowly, deliberately, she reached for the register, keeping her movements smooth and non-threatening. As she opened the drawer, her fingers brushed against a stack of fake bills she'd prepared earlier, a precautionary measure in case something like this ever happened. With trembling hands, Evelyn placed the money into an envelope and slid it across the counter toward Marcus. He snatched it up eagerly, stuffing it into his jacket pocket without counting. For a brief second, Evelyn considered revealing her true identity, but she quickly dismissed the idea. Doing so now would only jeopardize her mission. Instead, she bided her time, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. As Marcus gloated about how smart he was and how no one would ever catch him, Evelyn activated a silent distress signal on her phone. Within minutes, backup units would arrive, responding to her call for help. Until then, she played along, buying herself precious seconds while ensuring that Marcus walked straight into the trap she was setting. The rain outside continued to pour, masking the sound of approaching sirens. Unaware of the storm brewing both, literally and figuratively, Marcus smirked at Evelyn, confident in his victory. Little did he know the tables were about to turn in ways he could never imagine. The tension in the cafe was almost unbearable. Evelyn stood behind the counter, her hands gripping its edge to steady herself. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she kept her expression carefully neutral. Just scared enough to sell the act, but not so much that it raised suspicion. Detective Marcus Hale loomed over her, his gun still pointed unwaveringly in her direction. The dim lighting of the cafe cast long shadows across his face, making him look even more menacing than he already was. Marcus leaned forward slightly, narrowing the gap between them. His voice dropped lower, filled with a mix of arrogance and impatience. You understand what I'm saying, don't you? He asked, his tone leaving no room for negotiation. $5,000 tomorrow morning. If I don't get it, this place is done, and if you try calling anyone about this... He paused, letting the threat hang heavy in the air. Well, let's just say things won't end well for you. Evelyn swallowed hard, forcing herself to nod meekly. She had spent years perfecting the art of blending into roles, of becoming whoever she needed to be in order to complete her mission. Right now, she wasn't Special Agent Evelyn Carter. She was simply Evelyn, the nervous cafe owner trying to keep her business afloat. She let her shoulders slump slightly, as though weighed down by fear and helplessness. It was all part of the act, but inside her mind was working furiously. She glanced at the gun in Marcus's hand, then quickly looked away, pretending to avoid eye contact out of sheer terror. In reality, she was assessing every detail, the way he held the weapon, his stance, his body language. These were clues she could use later, pieces of evidence that might paint a clearer picture of who Marcus really was, and how far he'd go to protect himself. I'll find the money, Evelyn stammered, injecting just the right amount of desperation into her voice. I promise, just please don't shut me down. This cafe, it's everything to me. Marcus smirked, clearly enjoying the power he wielded over her. To him, Evelyn was just another victim, someone too small and insignificant to fight back. He didn't know that beneath her unassuming exterior lay a highly trained federal agent with access to resources far beyond anything he could imagine. For now, Evelyn let him believe what he wanted. Playing along wasn't just smart. It was essential. Good choice, Marcus said, holstering his gun but keeping it within easy reach. He crossed his arms over his chest, his posture relaxed yet commanding. Now listen closely, you're going to make sure that envelope is stuffed with real cash, not some fake bills or worthless checks. Got it? Because if I find out you've tried to cheat me... He trailed off, letting the implication hang in the air like smoke. Evelyn nodded again, her fingers trembling as she reached under the counter to retrieve a stack of papers. They weren't actual documents related to her cafe. They were decoys designed to look official enough to fool someone like Marcus. As she shuffled through them, she activated the hidden microphone tucked discreetly beneath her scarf. Every word Marcus spoke was being recorded, captured for posterity. This wasn't just about catching him. It was about building a case strong enough to dismantle the entire corrupt system he was tied to. As Evelyn slid the envelope toward Marcus, she made sure to keep her movements slow and deliberate. She didn't want to give him any reason to grow suspicious. Inside the envelope were fake bills, carefully crafted to mimic real currency, but useless in practical terms. It was a calculated risk, one she hoped would buy her enough time to gather more evidence before Marcus realized he'd been duped. Marcus grabbed the envelope without hesitation, stuffing it into his jacket pocket. He gave Evelyn a satisfied grin, clearly pleased with himself. "Smart move," he said, tapping the side of his temple with his finger. "See, when you play ball, everyone wins. Keep this up, and maybe we can have a nice little arrangement going forward." Evelyn forced a weak smile, though her stomach churned at the thought of cooperating with someone like him. But cooperation wasn't on her agenda. Not really. What she needed was leverage, and Marcus was unwittingly handing it to her on a silver platter. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sounds came from outside: the patter of rain against the windows, the distant hum of traffic, and the occasional rumble of thunder. Evelyn used the silence to her advantage, subtly activating the distress signal on her phone. Within minutes, backup units would arrive, responding to her silent plea for assistance. Until then, she had to keep Marcus distracted, ensuring he didn't leave until the cavalry arrived. "So," Evelyn began hesitantly, her voice barely above a whisper, "does this mean you'll leave me alone after this? If I pay, I mean?" Marcus chuckled darkly, shaking his head. "Oh, sweetheart, once you're in, you're in. Protection doesn't come cheap and it doesn't end. Think of it as an investment, a monthly fee to ensure your little cafe stays safe." He leaned closer, his breath hot against her ear. "Trust me, it's worth it." Evelyn fought the urge to recoil, instead nodding slowly. I see," she murmured, her voice cracking slightly. "Thank you. I'll make sure to have the next payment ready." Marcus straightened up, seemingly satisfied with her response. "Good girl," he said, patting her shoulder condescendingly. "Now remember what I told you. No funny business. Or else." He didn't need to finish the sentence. The unspoken threat lingered in the air, thick and suffocating. Evelyn nodded again, her eyes fixed on the floor. She knew better than to push back, not yet anyway. Timing was everything, and she couldn't afford to tip her hand prematurely. Just as Marcus turned to leave, the faint wail of sirens pierced the night. At first they were distant, almost drowned out by the sound of the rain. But they grew louder with each passing second, growing closer until they were impossible to ignore. Marcus froze mid-step, his head snapping toward the window. His confident demeanor faltered, replaced by a flicker of unease. "What the hell?" he muttered, glancing back at Evelyn. "Did you call someone?" Evelyn shook her head vigorously, feigning panic. "No! I swear I didn't call anyone. Please, I did exactly what you said." Marcus studied her face intently, searching for any sign of deception. For a split second, doubt clouded his expression, but then the sirens grew, even louder, accompanied by the flashing red and blue lights of police cars pulling up outside the cafe. Backup had arrived. Realization dawned on Marcus's face, followed swiftly by anger. "You little—" he started, reaching for his gun once more. But before he could draw it, the front door burst open, and uniformed officers flooded into the cafe, weapons drawn. "Police, drop your weapon," one of them shouted, their voice cutting through the chaos. Marcus hesitated, his grip tightening around the handle of his gun. For a brief moment, it seemed like he might resist. But then reason, or perhaps fear, got the better of him. Slowly, reluctantly, he lowered his weapon and raised his hands above his head. Evelyn stepped back, finally allowing herself to exhale, The relief washing over her was palpable, but she knew the battle was far from over. Marcus's arrest was just the beginning. There were still layers upon layers of corruption to unravel, secrets to uncover, and justice to serve. As Marcus was cuffed and led away, he shot Evelyn a venomous glare. "You'll regret this," he spat, his voice laced with venom. "Mark my words." But Evelyn didn't flinch. Instead, she watched him go with steely determination in her eyes. Whatever threats Marcus threw her way, she was prepared to face them head-on. After all, she hadn't gotten this far by backing down, and she certainly wasn't about to start now. The chaos of the moment had barely settled, but Evelyn's mind was already racing ahead. As Marcus was dragged out of the cafe in handcuffs, shouting threats and curses over his shoulder, she stood frozen for a moment, letting the gravity of what had just happened sink in. She had known this day would come, had prepared for it, but nothing could fully ready her for the adrenaline rush of seeing a corrupt officer caught red-handed. Still, there was no time to celebrate. The real work was only beginning. Once the Atiwa uniformed officers secured Marcus and cleared the cafe, Evelyn approached the senior officer leading the team. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. "I wasn't sure if help would arrive in time." The officer gave her a reassuring nod. "We got your signal loud and clear, ma'am. You're safe now." He hesitated, glancing around the cafe before adding, "But I have to ask, are you okay? Do we need medical assistance?" Evelyn shook her head firmly. "No, I'm fine. Just shaken up, that's all." It wasn't entirely untrue. Even though she'd been trained for situations like this, facing a loaded gun pointed at her chest was something no one could ever truly get used to. But she pushed those feelings aside. They weren't important right now. What mattered was ensuring Marcus didn't slip through their fingers. As the officers escorted Marcus into the waiting patrol car, Evelyn took a step back, watching carefully. Despite his bravado earlier, Marcus looked smaller somehow, deflated by the weight of his capture. His face was pale, his jaw clenched tightly as he sat slumped in the back seat. For someone who had spent years wielding power and intimidation over others, being on the receiving end must have felt surreal and humiliating. But Evelyn knew better than to underestimate him. Men like Marcus didn't fall easily or quietly. They fought tooth and nail to protect themselves, often dragging others down with them. If they wanted to take down the entire network of corruption he was connected to, they needed to act fast and smart. Back inside the cafe, Evelyn began gathering evidence. Every detail mattered. The envelope Marcus had stuffed into his pocket, the fake bills she'd slipped inside, even the faint scuff marks left by his boots on the tiled floor. She photographed everything meticulously, documenting each piece of the puzzle. Her phone buzzed repeatedly with updates from FBI headquarters confirming that Marcus's arrest was already making waves within the department. Word spread quickly when a decorated detective was taken into custody. It was bound to raise questions, suspicions, and possibly resistance from those who benefited from his schemes. While she worked, Evelyn replayed the events of the evening in her mind. Marcus had walked into her cafe expecting an easy payday, never imagining that the woman standing behind the counter was anything more than a frightened business owner. That arrogance had been his downfall. But Evelyn also knew that catching one corrupt cop wasn't enough. Marcus was just a cog in a much larger machine, a machine fueled by greed, fear, and decades of unchecked power. Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of Agent Harris, her direct supervisor at the FBI. Tall and imposing, with sharp eyes that missed nothing, Harris strode into the cafe with purpose. "Carter," he greeted her briskly, his tone professional but tinged with concern. "Are you all right?" "I'm fine," Evelyn replied, meeting his gaze steadily. "He didn't hurt me, and thanks to the backup we caught him before he realized who I really am." Harris nodded approvingly. "Good work tonight. You handled yourself well under pressure." He glanced toward the window, where the flashing lights of the patrol cars reflected off the rain-soaked streets. "Marcus," Hale is going to be a goldmine for us if we play our cards right. That's exactly what I was thinking, Evelyn said, her voice firm. He knows people, high-ranking officials, dirty cops, maybe even politicians. If we can flip him, he could give us the names we need to dismantle the entire operation. Harris raised an eyebrow. It won't be easy. Guys like Marcus don't turn on their own willingly. We'll need leverage. We've got plenty, Evelyn countered confidently. His extortion attempt tonight is solid proof of criminal activity. Add that to whatever else we dig up during interrogation, and he'll have no choice but to cooperate, or risk spending the rest of his life behind bars. Harris studied her for a moment, then gave a slight smile. You've thought this through. Good. Let's get moving then. Time is critical here. With Harris coordinating efforts from the field office and Evelyn focusing on building the case against Marcus, the next few hours passed in a blur of activity. Evidence was collected, reports filed, and preliminary interviews conducted. By dawn, Marcus was sitting in an interrogation room at FBI headquarters, his hands cuffed to the table, and his expression alternating between defiance and desperation. Evelyn watched him through the two-way mirror, studying his every move. Interrogation was both an art and a science, and she knew exactly how to approach him. Breaking someone like Marcus required patience, strategy, and a deep understanding of human psychology. Fear was a powerful motivator, but so was hope. If they could convince him that cooperation was his best chance at survival, they might just crack him open. When she finally entered the room, Evelyn carried herself with quiet confidence. She wore plain clothes rather than her usual suit, deliberately avoiding anything that screamed federal agent. To Marcus, she was still the cafe owner he'd threatened mere hours ago. Or at least, that's what she wanted him to think. Now, Detective Hale, she began softly, taking a seat across from him. Do you know why you're here? Marcus glared at her, his lips pressed into a thin line. Yeah, I know why. Because some rat tipped you off. That's how it always works, isn't it? Evelyn tilted her head slightly, maintaining eye contact. Actually, Detective, it's because of you. Your actions last night speak for themselves. Extortion, threats, brandishing a firearm in public. Those are serious charges. Marcus scoffed, leaning back in his chair. Come on. You think a little thing like that's gonna stick? I've been on the force for 15 years. People know me, they trust me. Whatever story you're trying to sell, it's not gonna fly. Oh, I'm not selling anything, Evelyn replied calmly. In fact, I'm giving you a chance to save yourself. See, we've already started digging into your background, financial records, phone calls, emails, you name it. And let me tell you, it's not looking good. For the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossed Marcus's face. He shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his bravado wavering. What do you want from me? He demanded, his voice edged with frustration. It's simple, Evelyn said, leaning forward slightly. Tell us who you're working for. Who else is involved in these schemes? Give us names, dates, locations, and maybe, just maybe, we can make a deal. Marcus hesitated, his mind clearly racing. Evelyn could almost see the gears turning as he weighed his options. On one hand, betrayal meant crossing people far more dangerous than himself. On the other, staying silent meant facing the full force of the law alone. It was a gamble either way, but Evelyn knew which path most people chose when backed into a corner. After a long pause, Marcus exhaled sharply, running a hand over his face. Fine, he muttered, his voice low and resigned. But if I talk, I want protection. A new identity. The works. Evelyn nodded slowly, hiding her triumph behind a mask of neutrality. That can be arranged, but only if your information pans out. No deals until we verify what you're telling us. Marcus clenched his jaw but eventually nodded. All right, where do you want me to start? And with that, the floodgates opened. Over the next several hours, Marcus spilled everything he knew. Names of co-conspirators, details of illegal operations, and even hints at higher-ups pulling strings from the shadows. Each revelation painted a clearer picture of the vast web of corruption Evelyn had suspected all along. As the sun rose outside, Casting golden light through the windows of FBI headquarters, Evelyn allowed herself a small smile. This was only the beginning, but it was a start. With Marcus's testimony in hand, they had the ammunition they needed to bring down the rest of the network. Justice wouldn't come overnight, but step by step, they were getting closer. And Evelyn Carter? She was ready for whatever came next. The morning after Marcus Hale's arrest, the city woke up to whispers. News of a decorated detective being taken into custody spread like wildfire through the police department and beyond. Officers exchanged uneasy glances in hallways while higher-ups scrambled to distance themselves from Marcus, or at least appear as though they were doing so. For Evelyn Carter, however, the real work had only begun. Inside FBI headquarters, the energy was electric. Teams buzzed around Evelyn, piecing together evidence, cross-referencing Marcus's statements, and mapping out connections between suspects. It wasn't just about catching one corrupt cop anymore. It was about dismantling an entire system that had thrived on fear and manipulation for years. And Evelyn knew she was standing at the center of it all. Deputy Chief Raymond Locke loomed, large over the investigation. According to Marcus, Locke wasn't just another participant in the corruption. He was its mastermind. A man who wielded power, not with brute force, but with calculated precision. Every decision he made seemed designed to protect himself while leaving others exposed if things went south. Evelyn understood why Marcus hesitated when naming him. Implicating Locke meant declaring war against someone untouchable, or so he thought. Evelyn spent hours reviewing every shred of information they had on Locke. Financial records showed suspicious deposits into offshore accounts. Phone logs revealed cryptic conversations with high-profile individuals, including judges, politicians, and even members of organized crime syndicates. Surveillance photos captured Locke meeting late at night in secluded warehouses or dimly lit parking lots, meetings that couldn't possibly be coincidental. As Evelyn sifted through the data, patterns emerged. Locke operated like a spider spinning its web, connecting seemingly unrelated threads until the entire structure held together seamlessly. But webs could unravel, and Evelyn intended to pull at every loose thread until the whole thing collapsed. While Evelyn worked tirelessly behind closed doors, an unexpected ally stepped forward, Detective Sandra Meyer. Sandra wasn't officially part of the task force investigating Locke, but her instincts told her something was deeply wrong within the department. She'd noticed inconsistencies in cases disappearing without explanation, promotions handed out based on favoritism rather than merit, and a growing sense of distrust among officers who once prided themselves on integrity. Sandra approached Evelyn, cautiously, aware of the risks involved in speaking openly. "I don't know how deep this goes," she admitted during their first private meeting, "but I've seen enough to know it's bad. If you're trying to take down Locke, count me," and Evelyn studied Sandra carefully before responding. Trust was a rare commodity in situations like this, especially given the stakes. One misstep could mean exposure, not just for Evelyn but for anyone foolish enough to stand by her side. Still, Sandra's determination resonated with Evelyn. Here was someone willing to risk everything to do what was right, even when no one else dared. "Are you sure?" Evelyn asked finally, her voice steady but firm. "This isn't going to be easy. People will come after you if they find out you're involved." Sandra nodded resolutely. "I didn't join the force to turn a blind eye to corruption. Whatever you need, I'm ready." With Sandra on board, Evelyn gained access to invaluable resources inside the department. Sandra provided insights into internal politics, flagged suspicious activities, and helped identify potential informants too afraid to speak up otherwise. Their partnership became a crucial piece of the puzzle, bridging the gap between Evelyn's outsider perspective and the inner workings of the police force. As days turned into weeks, Evelyn and her team laid the groundwork for a massive sting operation aimed squarely at Locke. They gathered wiretap recordings, surveillance footage, and documents linking him to illegal operations ranging from drug trafficking to embezzlement. Each piece of evidence brought them closer to building an ironclad case, but time was running out. Locke wasn't oblivious to the shifting winds around him. He began tightening his grip, calling emergency meetings with key players in his network and warning them to stay vigilant. His paranoia grew palpable, manifesting in sudden policy changes within the department and increased scrutiny of officers under his command. Evelyn watched closely, noting every move he made. The more desperate Locke became, the more likely he was to make mistakes, and Evelyn intended to capitalize on those errors. One evening, as Evelyn pored over files in her office, Agent Harris entered, his expression grim. "We've got a problem," he said without preamble. "Someone tipped off Locke. We don't know who yet, but he's on to us." Evelyn's stomach tightened. This was exactly what she'd feared, a leak within their ranks. "How much does he know?" Harris shook his head. "Hard to say. Enough to start covering his tracks, though. He's pulling strings faster than we can cut them." Evelyn leaned back in her chair, frustration bubbling beneath her calm exterior. They were so close, so painfully close to bringing Locke down. Losing momentum now would give him the opportunity to disappear entirely, leaving behind chaos in his wake. "We accelerate the timeline," Evelyn said firmly after a moment's silence. "If Locke knows we're coming, we hit him harder and faster than he expects, no more waiting." Harris raised an eyebrow. "That's risky. If we rush this, we might miss critical details that could blow the whole case." "And if we wait," Evelyn countered, "he'll burn everything to the ground. Evidence, witnesses, accomplices, it'll all vanish. We have to act, now." After a long pause, Harris nodded reluctantly. "All right, but we do this smart. No shortcuts." The following day, Evelyn orchestrated a dramatic reveal designed to shake Locke's confidence further. Using Marcus's testimony and newly acquired evidence, she leaked selective details to trusted media outlets. Within hours, headlines screamed about corruption allegations rocking the police department, with Deputy Chief Locke named as a central figure. Public outrage erupted almost immediately, putting immense pressure on city officials to address the scandal. For Locke, the revelation was both infuriating and terrifying. Suddenly, he found himself under intense scrutiny, not just from law enforcement but from the public eye. Calls poured into his office demanding answers, while anonymous tips flooded the FBI hotline accusing him of various crimes. Evelyn watched, with quiet satisfaction as Locke's carefully constructed facade began to crack. But Evelyn knew better than to celebrate prematurely. Locke wasn't defeated yet. In fact, cornered animals often lashed out unpredictably, and Locke was no exception. Reports surfaced of retaliatory actions within the department. Officers suddenly transferred to undesirable posts, investigations mysteriously halted, and threats whispered in hushed tones. Despite the escalating tension, Evelyn remained laser-focused. Every challenge, every obstacle only strengthened her resolve. She reminded herself daily why she'd chosen this path, not for glory or recognition, but because justice demanded sacrifice. And if taking down Locke required her to bear the weight of the world on her shoulders, then so be it. Late one night, as Evelyn sat alone in her apartment, she allowed herself a rare moment of reflection. The stress of the past weeks weighed heavily on her, manifesting in sleepless nights and constant vigilance. Yet amid the exhaustion, there was also clarity. For the first time in years, she felt truly alive, not because of danger or adrenaline, but because she was fighting for something greater than herself. Her phone buzzed on the coffee table, snapping her out of her thoughts. It was a message from Sandra. "Stay safe, Evelyn. We're close." Evelyn smiled faintly, typing a quick reply. "We'll get him. Together." As she set the phone aside, she gazed out the window at the city skyline. Somewhere in the shadows, Locke plotted his next move. But Evelyn wasn't afraid. She'd faced monsters before and she'd survived. This time would be no different. With renewed determination, Evelyn returned to her files, ready to face whatever came next. The battle ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was prepared. After all, the truth always found a way to shine, even in the darkest corners of the world. The city was buzzing with tension. The scandal surrounding Deputy Chief Raymond Locke dominated headlines, dominating conversations in coffee shops, subway cars, and even quiet family dinners. For Evelyn Carter, the public outcry was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it kept the pressure on Locke, forcing him to scramble defensively as accusations mounted against him. On the other hand, it also made her job infinitely more dangerous. With attention focused squarely on the investigation, every move Evelyn made felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. If there was one thing Evelyn had learned about men like Locke, it was that they didn't go down without a fight. And true to form, Locke wasn't content to sit idly by while his empire crumbled around him. Within days of the media expose, strange things began happening. Anonymous threats arrived at Evelyn's cafe, written in block letters on plain paper. "You don't know who you're messing with." A black SUV started tailing her whenever she left headquarters, lingering just far enough away to avoid suspicion, but close enough to make its presence known. Even Sandra Meyer reported feeling uneasy, claiming someone had broken into her locker at the precinct. Nothing stolen, just rifled through as if sending a message. Evelyn knew these incidents weren't random. They were calculated warnings meant to intimidate her into backing off. But instead of succumbing to fear, she used them to fuel her determination. Each threat reminded her why this fight mattered, not just for herself, but for everyone who'd suffered under Locke's reign of corruption. "What are you going to do?" Agent Harris asked during their morning briefing. His voice was calm, but the concern in his eyes betrayed his composure. "These tactics are escalating faster than we anticipated." "Ignore them," Evelyn replied firmly, though the words tasted bitter on her tongue. Ignoring danger wasn't easy, especially when it lurked so close. "If I react, I give him exactly what he wants. Control. We stick to the plan, double down on security measures, and keep moving forward." "He's panicking. That means we're winning." Harris nodded reluctantly, though his expression suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Still, Evelyn appreciated his trust in her judgment. She'd earned it over years of hard work and unshakable resolve. If anyone could take down someone, like Locke, it was her. As Evelyn delved deeper into the evidence against Locke, the full scope of his operation came into focus. It wasn't just a single corrupt officer or a handful of dirty deals. It was an intricate web connecting nearly every level of power in the city. Politicians accepted bribes to turn a blind eye. Judges dismissed cases tied to key players in Locke's network. Business owners paid extortion fees to stay afloat, while those who refused mysteriously found themselves facing arson attacks or fabricated charges. One name kept surfacing repeatedly: Victor Grayson, a wealthy entrepreneur with ties to organized crime. According to Marcus's testimony, and corroborated by financial records, Grayson served as Locke's primary financier. In exchange for laundering money and providing cover for illegal activities, Grayson received protection from law enforcement and access to lucrative government contracts. Together, Locke and Grayson had created a self-sustaining machine of greed and exploitation. But Evelyn didn't stop there. Using Sandra's insider knowledge, she identified several mid-level officers acting as enforcers within the department. These individuals carried out Locke's orders, whether it was planting evidence, intimidating witnesses, or silencing whistleblowers. Their involvement provided additional leverage. If Evelyn could flip them, she might be able to build a case strong enough to bring down the entire network. With time running out, Evelyn decided to take a bold step. She arranged a covert meeting with one of Locke's enforcers, Detective Ryan Cole, a man whose reputation for ruthlessness rivaled Marcus's. Unlike Marcus, however, Cole was fiercely loyal to Locke, or so everyone believed. Evelyn suspected otherwise. During her research, she'd uncovered discrepancies in Cole's behavior patterns. While outwardly obedient, he occasionally hesitated when carrying out particularly egregious orders. To Evelyn, this hinted at internal conflict, a crack she intended to exploit. The meeting took place late at night in an abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of town. Evelyn arrived alone, dressed casually to avoid drawing attention. Her heart raced as she waited, surrounded by shadows and the faint hum of distant traffic. This was risky, even reckless, but sometimes risks were necessary to win wars. When Cole finally appeared, his face was obscured beneath the hood of a sweatshirt. He moved cautiously, scanning the area before approaching Evelyn. "What do you want?" he demanded, his voice low and wary. "To help you," Evelyn replied calmly, keeping her hands visible to show she posed no immediate threat. "I know you've been following Locke's orders because you have no choice. But how long are you willing to let him use you as a pawn?" Cole stiffened, his jaw tightening. "You don't know anything about me, don't I?" Evelyn countered, gently. "I know you joined the force to make a difference, to protect people. But look where you are now, carrying out dirty jobs for a man who doesn't care about anyone but himself." For a moment, Cole said nothing. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, he admitted, "I'm trapped. If I stop, if I say no—" "You think Locke will protect you?" Evelyn interrupted, her tone sharp yet compassionate. "He'll throw you under the bus the second it benefits him. You deserve better than that." Cole hesitated, clearly torn between loyalty and self-preservation. Finally, he nodded slowly. "What do you need from me?" "Everything," Evelyn said simply. "Names, dates, locations, anything that proves Locke's involvement. In return, we'll offer you immunity and protection." It was a gamble, but Evelyn trusted her instincts. Cole wasn't a monster. He was a man caught in a system designed to devour him. With guidance and support, he might just become an ally rather than an enemy. Over the next few days, Cole delivered. Documents, recordings, and first-hand accounts poured in, painting an undeniable picture of Locke's criminal enterprise. Armed with this new evidence, Evelyn and her team prepared for the final phase of the operation. Confronting Locke directly, they set up surveillance on his movements, tracking his daily routine with precision. What they discovered shocked even Evelyn. Locke rarely ventured outside his fortified home unless absolutely necessary, relying on intermediaries to handle most transactions. When he did leave, he traveled in convoys of armored vehicles, flanked by armed guards. Breaking through his defenses would require careful planning and absolute secrecy. Evelyn spent hours poring over maps and blueprints, identifying potential weak points in Locke's security detail. She coordinated with tactical teams, ensuring everyone understood their roles in the upcoming raid. Every detail mattered. One slip-up could mean disaster. Finally, the day arrived. Under the cover of darkness, Evelyn led a small team of agents to Locke's estate on the edge of the city. The air was thick with anticipation as they approached the property, their movements silent and deliberate. Surveillance drones hovered overhead, relaying real-time footage to command centers miles away. When they breached the perimeter, resistance was minimal. Locke's guards, accustomed to operating in secrecy, were caught off guard by the sudden assault. Within minutes, Evelyn and her team had secured the mansion, cornering Locke in his study. For the first time, Evelyn came face to face with the man responsible for so much suffering. Locke stood tall, his posture defiant despite the chaos unfolding around him. "You think this changes anything?" he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Even if you arrest me, the system remains. Corruption doesn't die. It adapts." Evelyn met his gaze steadily, refusing to let his words shake. Maybe not, she admitted. But systems are made up of people, and today we're taking you out of the equation." As agents cuffed Locke and led him away, Evelyn allowed herself a brief moment of satisfaction. This wasn't the end of the battle, not by a long shot, but it was a victory worth celebrating. Justice might be slow, but it was relentless. And for now, that was enough.